Designed to replace the Windjammer surf racer roller coaster, the Xcelerator was highly touted as one of the greatest roller coasters to hit California. It was intended to be rather scary, while giving visitors a massive thrill. But this was all about to change just 7 years after its introduction, when the unthinkable happened. On an early fall day in September 2009, a young boy by the name of Kyle Wheeler faced one of the most painful injuries imaginable, whilst the state even found that the injury could have been prevented. But what happened on that fateful day? Join us as we look at the infamous Xcelerator Disaster. Located at Not Berry's farm in Buena Park, California, the Xcelerator is a steel roller coaster and also one of the first hydraulic coasters for the park to ever have. According to the website of the park, the Xcelerator is quite an exhilarating ride, capable of reaching impressive speeds. Initially, the ride launches to a speed of 82 miles per hour in about 2.3 seconds before it goes to a height of 205 feet, before immediately dropping down at a 90-degree angle and giving the thrill of being in danger. The total duration of the ride is around 62 seconds, and it can rotate around 1,333 riders per hour. In fact, this is one of the better roller coasters for the theme park, and not only shows a lot of profitability, but it actually delivers in terms of what guests would expect. However, the Xcelerator was not the first ride to be at that location. Years before, the Windjammer surf racers was the primary attraction, and it had a dueling type of design. Unfortunately, many issues were expected with it, and finally the theme park chose to have it replaced with the brand new revolutionary Xcelerator. But while many were having a great time with this roller coaster, the unfortunate would happen on September 16, 2009, when a young boy found himself fighting for his life and having the complete course of his life changed by this main attraction. Initially starting out as a berry farm in the 1920s, Knott's Berry eventually evolved into what would become America's first theme park. On this day in 2009, the Wheeler family, which consisted of Kyle, his father Russell, and his mother Anita, all went to the theme park for the day. Upon arriving at the ride, Anita chose not to partake, allowing her son and his father to enjoy the coaster. While standing on the sidelines, Anita noticed as the ride set off thanks to its hydraulic launch to finally make it to the top. Just 4 seconds after leaving the station, and still in the climbing phase, one of the cables snapped and viciously whipped toward Kyle Wheeler and his father. Upon impact, the car was literally split in half, but the bigger issue had been the debris that was attached to the cable, which had struck Kyle in the calf at around 80 miles per hour. While Kyle would survive this ordeal, Mother Anita was the one to see the entire incident unfold, and she would later describe the scene as thinking that she had just watched her son and husband die right in front of her eyes. Due to the incredible pain from this incident, it was no wonder that Kyle was screaming in agonizing pain, whilst his father was continuously screaming at the ride operators to stop the ride or to activate any emergency stop brake. A video closely shows how Kyle's face changes from excitement to complete fear before the incident, and thankfully the ride would not clear the 205-foot climb before slowly rolling back to the starting location. Here, ride operators realized something was not right, and the ride was stopped. A very anxious Russell immediately jumped out to get some help, and medical services would finally reach the young boy just a couple of minutes later. Kyle was immediately transported to the local hospital, while another unknown man was also transported to the hospital after complaining about back pain once the ride had stopped. The park was suddenly put in a very precarious situation, and the ride would immediately be closed for investigations as Kyle went to the hospital. In this moment, the life of Kyle Wheeler and his family would ultimately change. Kyle would stay in the hospital for the better part of the following year, where he underwent a multitude of different surgical procedures in an attempt to save his leg as best doctors could. Thankfully, the damage could fully be repaired, and Kyle slowly regained function in his leg. Numerous stints at the physiotherapist is probably one of the things that ultimately saved the young boy, and he would slowly have to relearn how to move, and to make sure that he gets to strengthen his leg. However, the reason for why this happened was still under scrutiny, but an investigation was about to take place. After the incident, an immediate investigation was launched, and one of the first things to be uncovered was how the park didn't do the regular inspections. In fact, the ride needed to be thoroughly inspected every month, and not every 6 months as the park organizers had believed. Another complication that came to light was the fact that the park had been 19 days with their current inspection, which means that the ride needed to be inspected 19 days before the arrival of the Wheeler family at the park. With everything now still a mess and the family dealing with the pain and suffering of their son in the hospital, the park would release a statement. But in the statement, the blame was shifted to the manufacturer of the ride, with the park claiming that the instructions regarding inspections and maintenance were not thorough or clear. The instructions also suggested that the farm put in additional safeguards to determine the cable viability and to ensure tests are being done to ensure that it does hold the weight load placed on it. Unfortunately, investigators would later find out that the reason for the cable fault was simply because of severe fatigue, which meant that the cable was working much harder than it was ever intended for it to be working. Further investigations also revealed that around 18 of the 20 magnets that would hold the coaster at the bottom and set it up for launch were also sheared off from the momentum of the cable, and this is when things took a turn for the worst for the park. A little while later, the family did seek compensation in a court of law, and their family attorney, Art Morgan, would confirm this during the time. Unfortunately, not much about the case has been made public, and the attorney, Mr. Morgan, had the following to say: "There's a confidential settlement, and we can't say the amount." This statement doesn't reveal a lot of information, but it does tell us that the family did seek some legal assistance, and they would reach an out-of-court settlement as a way of trying to repair all the damages. Mother Anita also mentioned the severe medical bills, with some of them reaching around $60,000, which put quite a lot of pressure on this middle-class family. The great news would be the fact that Kyle did seem to make a full recovery, and in 2011, his mother did suggest that Kyle was standing and walking on his own once again after this horrific ordeal. But this was the first and so far the last time something like this has ever happened at the Xcelerator ride. It was briefly closed in 2004, after the horrific ordeal which occurred at Knott's sister park, Cedar Point, Ohio. However, this was mainly to check to see if any faults were picked up, which at the time got the all clear. The problem was that in the following 5 years, the maintenance was somewhat neglected, and this eventually all took its toll in 2009. Fortunately, nothing similar has happened since, and the ride is still looking great in America's first ever theme park, which has also made it even more popular among those who love taking risks. The impressive 2,202-foot drop once the ride reaches the apex is perhaps one of the biggest thrills that any roller coaster enthusiast could ever experience. But this once again proves just how dangerous these rides can be, and the fact that maintenance is not always a top priority. Fortunately, strict regulations do force more and more of these parks to make sure they secure these rides and do the necessary maintenance. But who do you think is to blame for this ordeal? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you like this content, please like and subscribe. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep producing this type of content.